You felt it, the endless waiting, the tears, the silence that cut deeper than words. Every moment you thought you were breaking was never the end. It was the test, and now the universe is clear. You passed. Not because everything is perfect, not because the masculine suddenly showed up with all the answers, but because you did not collapse. You chose love when fear screamed louder. You stood in faith when the silence grew unbearable. You surrendered when your mind wanted to control. And that's the moment everything shifts. Because when the feminine passes the test, the entire field changes. The veil begins to lift. The masculine starts to feel what he cannot deny. And the universe says, now it's time to reveal all. Are you ready to see what this test was preparing you for? On the twin flame journey, it often feels like the tests will never stop. One challenge follows another. One cycle repeats the last. And the feminine begins to wonder if she will always be stuck in waiting, in silence, in longing. But there comes a moment, subtle yet undeniable, when the energy shifts. It is the moment the test ends. Not because the masculine suddenly returns with words of love. Not because everything in the physical looks perfect, but because the feminine herself has changed. The test ends the moment she no longer collapses into fear. For so long, silence would break her. A single unanswered message would spiral her into despair. A delay in his return would make her doubt everything she had felt. But one day, after enough cycles, after enough tears, she discovers something different inside her. She feels the silence, yes, but she does not fall apart. She feels the longing, but she does not beg. She feels the doubt whisper, but she does not believe it. Instead, she anchors herself in the truth of her soul. That is the passing of the test. It is not about perfection. It is not about never feeling pain again. It is about responding differently. It is about choosing faith when the mind screams doubt. It is about standing steady when the old patterns would have made her collapse. And in that choice, the feminine shifts the entire energy of the connection. The universe designs these tests not to punish, but to prepare. The divine knows that union cannot be built on fear. It cannot rest on constant external validation, on chasing, on doubt. The sacred field of union is too pure for that. So the feminine is placed in situations that strip her of every illusion, every safety net, every crutch. She is made to stand in her power, even when nothing outside of her confirms what she feels inside. That is the fire that refines her. And the moment she realizes she can stand in that fire without being destroyed, the test ends. The test ends when silence no longer shakes shakes her sense of worth. The test ends when she no longer doubts the bond simply because he has not spoken. The test ends when she knows, deep in her bones, that the connection is eternal, whether or not the physical reflects it yet. For the masculine, this shift is powerful. He may not even understand what is happening, but he feels it. The pressure he once felt from her fear and chasing disappears. The heaviness in the bond begins to dissolve. Instead of desperation, he feels her certainty. Instead of doubt, he feels her strength. And this begins to work on him in ways he cannot ignore. Her passing the test creates the space for him to face his own. The ending of the test does not mean the journey is over. It means the foundation is finally secure. It means the feminine has anchored faith so deeply that she can no longer be shaken from it. And because of this, the universe can now reveal what was hidden. The masculine can now feel the full weight of the bond without the distortion of her fear. The path can now open because the vibration of union is present. This is the paradox. The test ends not with him, but with her. Not with his words, but with her silence turned into faith. Not with his action, but with her surrender. When she shifts, everything else begins to move, and she realizes that the tests were never about proving the bond. They were about preparing her to hold it. So if you feel something different inside you now, a strength you didn't have before, a peace even in the silence, a trust that remains even when nothing outside supports it, that is the sign. The test is over. You passed. And now the field is ready for the next stage. The moment the test ends is not when he says the words. It is when you no longer need him to. And in that moment, everything begins to reveal itself. How do you know when the test is truly over? How can you tell if you've crossed the threshold, or if you are still cycling through the same old lessons? The answer doesn't come in external signs alone. It comes in the way your heart responds to silence, to distance, to uncertainty. It shows up in your energy, in your choices, in your ability to stand steady when the old triggers rise. The first sign you have truly passed is that silence no longer has the same power over you. Once, his absence would have shattered you. A single unanswered message would have spiraled into days of fear and self-doubt. But now, though the silence may sting, it does not destroy you. You feel the ache, but it no longer defines your worth. You no longer interpret silence as rejection. Instead, you see it as part of the process, even as preparation. That shift alone is proof that you have grown beyond the old cycle. The second sign is the release of the need to chase or control. When you were still in the test, you may have felt compelled to reach out constantly to force clarity, to demand answers. Your fear drove you to try and manage the connection with your hands. But passing the test means surrendering that need. You no longer beg for his attention. You no longer push against his resistance. Instead, you allow, you trust, you hold space. And in that space, something new begins to breathe. Another sign is the peace that begins to settle inside you, even when the physical shows nothing. The external may still look uncertain. He may still be silent, still working through his own shadows. But you are no longer swayed by every movement or lack of movement. Your heart holds steady. You live your life, pursue your path, and radiate your truth, not from a place of waiting, but from a place of knowing. The storm still rages outside, but you have found the calm within. A deeper sign you've passed the test is the way you relate to your own fears. Fear may still arise, whispers of doubt, memories of abandonment, insecurities about your worth. But instead of collapsing into them, you face them, you breathe through them, you remind yourself of the truth until it becomes louder than the fear. You no longer run from your shadows, nor do you let them dictate your choices. You hold them with compassion, and in doing so, you dissolve their power. There is also a shift in how you perceive him. When you were still in the test, his silence felt like rejection. His distance felt like abandonment. You saw his actions through the lens of your wound. But when you pass, you begin to understand that his retreat is not about you. It is about him. It is his process, his fear, his preparation. You stop taking his silence personally and start seeing it as part of the divine choreography. This perspective lifts the weight of blame and frees the energy of the connection. Most of all, the clearest sign is the knowing that lives inside you. A knowing that does not demand constant reassurance. A knowing that does not collapse when the physical contradicts it. A knowing that remains steady even in the void. This knowing is not arrogance. It is not denial. It is the quiet certainty of the soul, the unshakable truth that this bond is eternal and cannot be undone. When these signs are present, you realize the test was never about him. It was never about whether he would come back or whether he would choose you. It was about you choosing yourself, about you choosing love instead of fear, about you becoming strong enough to anchor the field of union without collapsing under its weight. And when you pass, the universe recognizes it. The energy shifts. doors begin to open. The masculine begins to feel the change, even if he doesn't understand it yet. Your vibration no longer feeds the cycle of fear, but stabilizes the bond in truth. And from that place, the next stage can finally unfold. The signs are not outside. They are within you, and when you recognize them, you will know the test is done. You passed, and nothing can take that away. Why the final trial was so painful. If you look back on your twin flame journey, you'll notice something striking. The closer you got to union, the heavier and more unbearable the tests became. Just when you thought you had healed enough, just when you believed you were finally steady, the ground beneath your feet shook harder than ever. The silence became louder. The waiting grew longer. The doubt screamed with a voice you thought you had already silenced. And you may have wondered, why does it hurt so much right at the end? The answer lies in the nature of the soul's purification. The final trial is painful because it must burn away the last illusions, the deepest fears, the roots you did not even know were there. At the beginning of the journey, you faced surface wounds, the need for validation, the ache of longing, the sting of rejection. But as you grew, the wounds that remained were buried deeper, and the only way to uproot them was through intensity. That is why the last trial felt cruel. It was not cruelty, but precision. The universe pressed on exactly the places where your faith was still fragile, where your wounds still bled, where your fear still lingered. If abandonment was your greatest wound, the masculine silence mirrored it louder than ever. If unworthiness haunted you, circumstances arose that made you question your value again. If control was your defense, everything collapsed until you could no longer hold on. This intensity was necessary because union cannot coexist with shadow. If even one root of fear remained, it would poison the sacred bond. So the final test was designed to feel like breaking, to strip you of everything false, to force you to see what you had tried to bury, to leave you with nothing but truth. For the feminine, this was agonizing. Nights of crying, moments of despair, days when the weight felt unbearable. But even in that agony, something deeper was happening. Each breakdown carved space for breakthrough. Each collapse became an opportunity to rise. Each wave of pain washed away what could not enter union. The masculine, too, was pressed in his own way. His fears of failure, of losing control, of not being enough, became sharper. His resistance felt heavier, and in his silence, in his withdrawal, he mirrored the feminine's last fears back to her, not as punishment, but as activation, to help her see where her faith was still tested. The final trial hurts so much because it is the last layer, and the last layer is always the most resistant. Like a scar that has healed over but still aches when touched, and the deepest wound rises just before it dissolves. It feels like regression, like going back to the start, but in truth, it is completion. The pain intensifies not because you failed, but because you are about to be free. Think of it as the last contraction before birth. The labor pains are strongest right before new life emerges. And the twin flame journey is no different. The greatest pressure comes at the threshold, not because you are far from union, but because you are right at the door. This is why the final trial was so painful. It was the universe's way of making sure nothing false could pass through the portal. It was the refining fire, burning away what no longer belonged. It was the sacred storm that cleared the path so that union could be built on nothing but truth. And though it nearly broke you, it didn't. You survived. You stood. You chose love even when fear tried to crush you. And in that choice, you proved to yourself and to the universe that you are ready. So the pain was not meaningless. It was the sign that the test was working. It was proof that you were close. And now, on the other side of it, you can see the pain was the price of freedom, and you have already paid it. When the feminine passes her test, something subtle yet undeniable begins to ripple through the field. She may not announce it. She may not change her external actions in dramatic ways. But energetically, everything is different. She no longer collapses into fear when silence stretches on. She no longer chases or clings to his responses. She no longer feeds the cycle of doubt. Instead, she anchors in her truth, radiates her stability, and surrenders the outcome to the divine. And even though she may not speak it aloud, the masculine feels it. The awakening of the masculine often begins not with sudden clarity, but with discomfort. For so long, her fear, her chasing, her doubt created a strange sense of control for him. It allowed him to hide, to resist, to push back against the intensity of the connection. But when she no longer reacts the way she used to, he feels the ground shift beneath him. The safety of her old patterns is gone. Her energy is different, calmer, stronger, untouchable. And this unsettles him. At first, he may not understand what is happening. He may even try to provoke the old response, consciously or unconsciously. He may delay communication, stay distant, test her energy in subtle ways. But instead of fear, he feels steadiness. Instead of desperation, he feels peace. Instead of chaos, he feels certainty. And though he may not admit it, this certainty pierces through his walls. It awakens something he has been running from all along. The masculine begins to realize that her energy is no longer dependent on him. She is not waiting for his approval, not collapsing at his silence, not demanding his presence to feel whole. And this does two things inside him at once. It terrifies him and it draws him closer. It terrifies him because he can no longer hide behind her doubt. It draws him because her strength mirrors the truth within him that he has been too afraid to claim. Her passing the test creates a new dynamic. The field between them feels lighter, more open. The resistance he once leaned on begins to crumble because there is no longer a cycle of push and pull. There is only the steady vibration of love. And love, when held in its purity, is irresistible. Slowly, the masculine begins to awaken. He may not return immediately with words of love, but he starts to feel the pull more strongly than ever. He notices that no distraction satisfies him. No relationship substitutes for the connection he has with her. No escape brings peace. Her energy, steady and radiant, calls to him on a level he cannot explain. This awakening often shows itself in subtle signs at first. Dreams of her, random thoughts he cannot shake, emotions rising unexpectedly. He may feel restless, unable to distract himself with the old ways. He may begin questioning his life, his choices, his path, all because the feminine has shifted the field by standing in her truth. The masculine awakens to the realization that the connection is real, not because she told him again and again, but because he feels it in his own soul. Her energy reflects back to him the truth he can no longer deny. And with time, this truth becomes louder than his fear. This is why her passing the test matters so deeply. It is not only for her growth, it is also the key to his awakening. By holding her ground, she creates the space for him to rise. By embodying faith, she dissolves the illusion that once gave his fear power. By trusting the bond, she invites him to trust himself. And so the masculine begins to stir, slowly, steadily, undeniably. Because when the feminine passes her test, the masculine can no longer remain asleep. The shift within her becomes the call that finally awakens him. The twin flame journey is not random. Every silence, every delay, every collapse has been orchestrated with precision, shaping you into who you were always meant to become. But the universe does not reveal the next stage until the soul has proven ready. That is why the journey feels like endless cycles, not because nothing is happening, but because the soul is being prepared for what is too sacred to rush. And when the feminine passes her test, when she chooses faith over fire consistently, the universe responds. The veil begins to lift. The next stage is revealed. What does this next stage look like? It is not always a sudden reunion or a grand gesture. More often, it is a subtle yet undeniable shift in energy. You begin to notice that the heaviness in the bond is gone. The weight of fear no longer clouds your connection. Instead, there is space for truth, space for movement, space for the masculine to step forward without resistance. The universe reveals the next stage by aligning synchronicities that confirm your progress. Numbers repeat, dreams become clearer, signs grow louder. These are not random. They are the markers of a new frequency. They show you that the field is no longer clogged with fear. They reassure you that your surrender has opened the pathway for union to anchor. For the masculine, this next stage feels like pressure he cannot escape. The distractions that once worked no longer satisfy him. The walls he built no longer protect him. The resistance he clung to begins to crumble under the weight of truth. And though he may still hesitate, the call becomes undeniable. He feels the pull not because she is chasing, but because the universe is aligning him with her steady vibration. The feminine, on her side, feels the shift in her own life as well. She begins to attract opportunities, to step deeper into her mission, to embody the love she once longed for outside herself. She no longer waits for him to validate her journey. She lives it fully, and in doing so, she creates a field that magnetizes him. The next stage is not only about him coming closer, it is about her stepping fully into who she is. And the universe waits for this alignment. Because union is not given when you beg for it, when you cry for it, when you chase it. It is revealed when you are ready to sustain it. The divine knows that once union anchors, it cannot be undone. It is too sacred to be rushed, too pure to be built on fear. That is why the test had to come first. That is why the pain had to be endured. And that is why, now that you have passed, the pathway begins to clear. The signs of the next stage are unmistakable. A deeper peace within, a stronger pull between you, a sense that something is about to shift. You may not see all the details yet, but you feel it. The universe whispers it through every synchronicity, every dream, every moment of quiet certainty. You know the story is not ending. It is just beginning in a new form. This is the divine's promise. Once the feminine passes the test, the next stage will always reveal itself. Not on her timeline, not on his timeline, but on the soul's timeline. And when it does, it will be clear that nothing was wasted, no tear was in vain, no silence was meaningless. Every moment was preparation. So if you feel the shift now, trust it. The universe has seen your surrender, your growth, your faith. The test is complete, and now the next chapter of your union is ready to unfold. What reveal all means for union. When the feminine passes the test, the universe whispers, "It's time to reveal all." But what does this truly mean? It does not always mean that the masculine shows up overnight with every truth spilling from his lips, nor does it mean that every mystery is suddenly solved. Instead, reveal all is the unveiling of what has always been there, the truth of the bond, the reality of the love, the hidden alignment that was waiting for both to be ready. To reveal all means the veil of illusion is lifted. For so long, the feminine saw silence and believed it was rejection. She saw distance and thought it was abandonment. She mistook delay for denial. These illusions were powerful, but they were never the truth. And when she passes the test, she no longer sees through the lens of fear. The truth is revealed. Silence was never absence. Distance was never disconnection. Delay was never the end. All along, the bond was alive, unbreakable, eternal. For the masculine, reveal all means his own awakening becomes undeniable. He may have tried to hide it, to bury it, to distract himself. But once the feminine holds steady in her truth, the truth within him rises to the surface. He can no longer pretend he doesn't feel her. He can no longer deny the pull. He can no longer escape the connection. The revelation happens inside him first, an inner knowing that she is the one, that the bond is real, that his running has been futile. This revelation often begins with subtle shifts, vivid dreams of her, overwhelming emotions he cannot explain, synchronicities that follow him no matter how he resists. But the more he tries to push it away, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, the truth crashes through his walls, leaving him no choice but to face it. The reveal all moment for him is when he admits, if only to himself, that the love he has with her is unlike anything else, and it cannot be denied. For the feminine, reveal all is also an inner shift. It is the moment she realizes she no longer needs external proof because the connection itself is her proof. She no longer wavers when the physical looks uncertain. She no longer doubts when words are missing. She simply knows. And in that knowing, the entire field of union stabilizes. The all is revealed not just in him, but in her. The strength, the certainty, the unwavering faith she has cultivated through every trial. On the larger scale, reveal all is the universe showing both counterparts that the journey has always been guided. What felt like chaos reveals itself as divine order. What looked like separation reveals itself as preparation. Every delay, every tear, every silence is shown to have been part of the greater design. This is the moment when hindsight becomes clear, when the pieces of the puzzle finally fit together, when both realize that nothing was wasted. And yes, in many cases, reveal all does bring physical revelation too. The masculine may finally speak words he has held back for years. He may confess his love, his fear, his truth. The feminine may finally see in the physical what she has always known in the spiritual. But even before that moment arrives, the revelation is already happening in the energy, in the soul, in the undeniable pull that neither can resist. The phrase, reveal all, is not about drama. It is about truth. It is the moment when the illusions collapse and only the eternal bond remains visible. It is when both realize that the love they share is not something they imagined, but something divinely ordained. And once the truth is revealed, it cannot be hidden again. For union, this moment is everything. It marks the shift from shadow into light, from doubt into certainty, from testing into fulfillment. It proves that the feminine's faith was not in vain, that her passing the test has prepared the field, and that the masculine is now awakening to the same truth. To reveal all is to step into the reality of what has always been written in both souls, that they are one, and nothing can undo what has been destined. As you look back over your twin flame journey, it may seem like a story of endless waiting, unbearable silence, and painful tests. You may remember nights when you begged the universe for clarity, moments when you thought the bond was broken, seasons where you doubted your own worth. Yet here you are, stronger, clearer, deeper in your soul than you have ever been. And the truth is this: you were always ready. The tests were not designed to make you worthy. You were already worthy. They were designed to help you see your worth, to strip away everything that made you doubt it. The silence did not come to prove you were abandoned. It came to show you that you could never be abandoned, because the connection lived inside you. The delays did not mean you were failing. They meant the timing was aligning with precision. The pain did not arrive to destroy you. It arrived to refine you, to carve out space for a love so powerful that nothing false could remain. The final message of this journey is not that you must keep striving to be ready. It is that you always were. Every collapse, every surrender, every moment of faith was part of the unveiling of who you already are. The anchor of unconditional love, the vessel of union, the mirror of the divine. For the feminine, this realization is liberation. She no longer waits for him to confirm her truth, because she already embodies it. She no longer needs the masculine's presence to feel whole, because she has remembered her wholeness. And ironically, it is this very wholeness that magnetizes him. When she finally understands she was always ready, he feels it, and he awakens to his own readiness in return. For the masculine, the revelation is just as powerful. He realizes he was never running from her, but from himself. He sees that the love he resisted was never a threat, but his greatest homecoming. He understands that all along, he too was being prepared, not punished, not abandoned, but refined in his own way. His awakening is the mirror of hers. He too was always ready, even when he could not admit it. The universe's final gift is the unveiling of this truth. Readiness is not about perfection or control or timelines. It is about alignment. And alignment happens the moment you remember who you are, the moment you choose love over fear, the moment you stand in faith regardless of appearances. So let this be your final message. Stop asking if you are ready. Stop doubting if you are enough. Stop believing that one more test, one more cycle, one more lesson must be endured before you can have what is already written in your soul. You were always ready. From the very beginning, the tests only revealed it. Now, as the veil lifts, as the masculine awakens, as the field clears, hold this truth close. Nothing can stop what has already been destined. Nothing can undo what has already been sealed in the soul. The tests were never to create your readiness. They were to prove it to you. And now, with faith unshakable, with love unbreakable, with union inevitable, you step forward not as someone waiting, but as someone knowing. You were always ready. And now, it's time to reveal all.